Oh boy, Carter, thanks so much for joining the show today. Just step on in here and... oh my god!
Whoa. Wow.
Brenton!
He's fucking dead, dude. What the hell? He's hanging. What?
Is that a copy of Cats playing on the television? Like...
Oh my god. It is, yeah. It's Cats. It's 2019's Cats by Tom Hooper. Wait, he's got Tom Hooper's face duct taped to his face, and there's a cat attached to the end of his penis.
Oh no.
And he's just swinging, and it's so limp, and he's got, I don't know, what is that on his feet? He's got fucking Reeboks? Is that like the special 2019 edition, Cats edition Reeboks, the special limited edition that you could only win from Event Cinemas on a limited run of the preview screenings if you bought tickets super early? Fuck. Oh my god.
Oh no.
This is
Wait a
a
minute.
crime of passion.
I think I see him twitching a little bit. I think he's still alive.
Psych!
Ah!
Ah, you cheeky bugger.
Now dig on this.
Welcome to Classic Movie Banter. You know that podcast with me, that guy Brenton, and that other guy over there, Nathan.
Hello.
We talk about movies that are 20 years or older. 20 years, Nathan.
Or 49 years, to be exact. For
Oh,
today.
well done. He's on
I'm
it.
so
He's
onto
on
it,
it.
mate.
And we tell you, our lovely listeners, if those movies are still worth watching today. And more importantly, if they're still worth watching with a bunch of mates on a Thursday night, just sitting around, having a movie night and sticking it on, and it still holds up. You know what I mean? That's what we want. That's the ideal situation.
We want for you. But speaking of mates, Brenton, oh boy, do we have one in the room here today. It's like, I think he is.
Do we?
Hello!
How you doing, Carter?
Hello, friends. I'm great. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to break my podcast virginity on this here little boys banner you got going on. I don't mind if I do. Take a little dip into the world of cinematic criticism. Here we go.
Oh, fantastic. You're a young Roger Ebert in the making, mate.
Fuck yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, I'm so excited to get to do the podcast because Carter went to school with me and we had some great times there, Carter, and so we're back on air. And we're chatting about a movie you suggested today.
Yes we are. Harold and Maude.
Directed by Hal Ashby, and it was released in 1971.
Oh, beautiful.
Now, since Carter is the guest on the show today, what's awesome is that with all of our guests, I feel, is that they bring something they're passionate about. You know, they bring something to the show that they love and they want to talk about, or maybe it's not even love. Maybe they just really hate it, but they have passion for the film. You know what I mean?
Good.
And they bring it to the show, and then Nathan and I just kind of shit all over it. That's kind of how this usually works.
Mate, that is not the template. We've loved our other guests' movies, mostly, I think.
No, we have actually.
Yeah.
It's been pretty consistent.
Yeah.
But
it'd be really awkward the day that we don't. Like a person comes in and they really gush, and then we're like, "Ooh, you're wrong." It wouldn't be good.
Yeah, and it's really obviously bad, but it's you know, it's basically every time I suggest a film on the show, that's what happens.
I feel like as long as it aligns with my scat fetish, then I'm all in. So I don't really care. You can shit on whatever you want. It's just I'll just get to watch. That's all I ask.
Thanks for coming on the show. So here we go. Pitch us Harold and Maude.
Can you pitch me the movie?
So, Harold and Maude is a story about a young man who is struggling to find love or even care about the world that he's in.
But enough about you, Carter. Tell us about the movie.
What? Well, alright, well, firstly, fuck you. Second, the movie, if you'll let me finish what I was trying to say.
That's really mean from a studio exec. Just they say it bluntly to the guy pitching in the room.
God damn it. Alright. It's about fucking Harold. He's a rich kid. His mum's a rich mum. They live a upper crust, echelon kind of life. But Harold has a special secret that he kind of, abuses throughout the course of the movie, which is that he's indestructible. And that he chooses to kill himself at all these different moments in the movie, but of course it's always staged or hoaxed or whatever. He can't die, and his mum is trying to get him in with a woman so he can fulfill the prophecy in her eyes and become a sensible young man. But obviously Harold has absolutely no interest in women his age because they're all fucking basic as hell.
According to Harold.
Yeah, and as a person who is indestructible and likes to kill himself a lot, he likes to attend a lot of funerals. And one time while he attends a funeral, he meets an old lady at a funeral who seems like she doesn't give a shit about life, or, well, not doesn't give a shit about life, but the norms of life, and is just trying to live freely and live her own way. And Harold and her form this relationship that basically carries over the entire course of the movie and gets to show what life is really all about, you know, that anyone can find love, and that's basically where the movie goes.
Oh, how heartwarming.
It's a very heartwarming film that I feel like there aren't enough of these kinds of films in existence, so it's a rare breed. But yeah,
Beautiful. That was a perfect pitch.
That was probably one of the best pitches that has been.
This is
on
what
this show.
always happens when we get guests.
yeah, see, this is what happens when you don't fucking interrupt me, Nathan, you cock. Anyway,
Well, someone had to say it, didn't they? Like,
Oh, I've been waiting to say that for so long, and he just perfectly articulated what I've been feeling since episode number 1.
this is more therapeutic than anything else. Like,
That's the other thing that happens when guests come on the show. It lets Nathan and I sort out our shit, you know what I mean? Just for our lovely listeners listening in, they're like, finally, you know, they're addressing the elephants in the room. Get them out.
I've got nothing to lose by being here, you know that, right? So I'm just gonna like,
No, yeah.
I'm just gonna say what I need to say. I was gonna say it how I sees it.
thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, Carter. Because you know what? Maybe let's start off how this film came into your life. Maybe like I want to know why this came to the forefront for you, because I'd never heard of this before.
My mum and I have an interesting relationship when it comes to films. She can either show me some of the best films I've ever seen in my life. Like she was the person who showed me No Country for Old Men when I was a little kid. I was like 13, and it blew my fucking life away, and I was like amazed. And she's also just shown me some utter trash and just hates other kinds of films that I love, and you know. But this is the one film that, you know, when I was I don't remember how old I was. I think I was like 16, 17. Anyway, she put it on, and I remember sitting down and watching it, and I remember feeling so profoundly like touched by it as a kid, just being like, oh my god, I've never seen something that has been so moving in this way since I was like a little kid watching Fantasia or whatever. So I just feel like it was that feeling of the film that got me, and the fact that no one knows what this movie is, and it's a huge shame. So yeah,
That's really interesting for a mother to recommend for a son as well. It's like, because there's a very strong mother-son dynamic in this movie. It's like, what are you trying to say? Like, was she like, get a girlfriend, or like?
we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah.
Oh no, not for public airing.
No, there isn't a rabbit hole. I'm just fucking around. But I think I feel like the movie is incredibly important in a way, because it's literally just, it's got one really strong, good message to bring, and it does it in a really entertaining and original way. And the story of how this movie was made is kind of awesome as well, which is a whole other thing that I can get into a little later.
I'll go
on.
into
But
it,
yeah.
mate.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So essentially, the way that this movie came about was a Australian screenwriter for years had been trying to break into the industry, and he moved over to Hollywood without any real idea of how he was going to do it. So he just decided to start, you know, trying to be around Hollywood as much as possible, and he inserted himself into a producer's home as a pool cleaner. And one day, while he was, you know, cleaning the guy's pool, he brought up the fact that he wrote the script, and the guy was like, oh yeah, you know, just, you know, slide it along my desk and I'll have a look at it and give you some feedback. And he took it, and then about 6 months later, the film was greenlit and ready to go. And it was just just so happened to be, dude was cleaning his pool, he just casually brought up in conversation, and then bada bing bada boom, he started his career. And it was like, yeah, fucking pretty insane.
It's that classic Hollywood, you know, statement. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter if you're cleaning the pool. You'll one day you'll get a big break, and it'll just all fall into place because you're in your budgie smugglers cleaning that pool. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
That's what I do anyway. That's why I've decided to just take up pool cleaning now, because that sounds lit, as they say. Carter, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Like you said, like, that's such a wonderful story, and I'm glad that you get the opportunity to, you know, to sell everyone this movie and tell everyone why this movie is great. Because after watching it, I gotta say, like, I thought this movie was brilliant. Utterly brilliant. I think it was not only, like you said, has it got an emotional thesis that's just really, like, easy to attach yourself to and everyone can kind of relate to, even though obviously these characters express those feelings in very, you know, different ways. It's also just like really well made for like a coming of age story film that is quite simple in its premise, but the way like the cinematography and the editing works in this movie, I think is like utterly brilliant. Like the first 2 minutes of this movie just sucked me in, like absolutely sucked me dry. I was just in there, I was ready to go, and I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. And from the beginning, and it was that way from the beginning to the end of this movie. And it meant that like, because like obviously this has got some very dark humor as well. Like that was entertaining in its own right, but it meant that like the moments that it's meant to emotionally hit you, it really just connected with me. You know what I mean? Like there's still moments that like it's got punches, this movie, and it throws them really well. And I got hit.
You were bruised.
Yeah, I got a few broken ribs after watching this, I gotta say. And it's the screenplay as well that is able to do this, and obviously the performances as well. It has this line, this movie, you know, and it never really crosses it. It always goes like close to this line of like, you know, oh, is it going to go too far and it's just going to jump the shark? But it never does. It's still grounded and it's still attached to the thesis of this movie, which is basically a coming of age story and learning to live life and love life and experience life and live life to the fullest. And it's a nice message and it's well made. That's my 2 cents. Nathan, what did you think?
Like I agree with a lot of that. Like definitely there's an emotional core to this movie, right? You're feeling for Harold and Maude, but it's funny because like not watching it and hearing that, you would feel like it's kind of like heartwarming in its sense, but you're right, there is this like really dark humor that underpins it. And like there's something about this that feels so off in that sense. Like there's something very not right with this world, all these people that's like going on. And it's like, I don't know, I loved it. I love this movie so much. But I think I loved it because it had that kind of like that Shining or that Exorcist kind of vibe where like there's just something very wrong with this world that this guy's in. It actually reminds me a lot of The Graduate, where like we see like Dustin Hoffman kind of be placed in this world that he despises and he wants to get out of, and he finds a relationship that can tag him out. So like we see that where Harold finds Maude. Definitely the strength of this is probably the script. I would say this is like insanely well written for what it is, but also the directing is amazing. Like you see him at one point as well, bless him, while he's staring at a train. But you know, this is a good job. I was surprised how also this hasn't aged.
Yeah.
Like even if you were to like shot it today, like and replicate the shots, it wouldn't look that much better.
Yeah, I think the story is this classic. Yeah, it's like a really age-old tale of just trying to find acceptance, you know, in some way. And I mean, like, yeah, it's told through like the lens of an edgelord who is indestructible, sure, but I think that is in itself quite charming, and it doesn't feel, I feel like that kind of just enhances the relatability of the main character so much more, when it's like, yeah, if you could be like this, if you could do this, if you were in this guy's position, like, wouldn't you? And wouldn't you like just have fun with it every single day of your life? And then wouldn't you, if the only person in this world who was this crazy grandma was the only person you could actually relate to and find happiness from, like, wouldn't you want to just spend every moment together, you know? And it gives you hope as well, because it's like, yeah, you can just find love in the most unsuspecting places, like, you know, and you can never really put like a label on a thing. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about the movie. It was like, it was very free spirited, and like fucking Cat Stevens. Oh man,
the music.
After I watched the movie,
my God.
I listened to like a huge amount of Cat Stevens after this, and like, yeah, I'm really in love with one of his albums right now.
Yeah, I think going off that as well, like, you know, obviously we've expressed that this movie's got an emotional core, you know, it's got some dark humor in there, it's got a weird tone, it kind of flirts, you know, with the audience a lot. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't go where I thought it was going, and it didn't, you know what I mean? It stuck to its guns, and it had its tale to tell, and it just expertly pulled it off. But the other thing I think this movie covers, which I think is awesome, is that not only is it about, like, you know, living life to the fullest, but it's also about, like, you know, how we deal with, you know, loss, and how someone, like, you know, that is indestructible and does view death as something that's kind of like amusing almost.
Yeah, which is not a new story. It's like the person who can't die dislikes immortality. Like, that's an old tale.
But I like that where this movie goes is that it actually deals with the consequences of death, and, like, you know, if you find love and you find like a purpose in life, you know, that's only finite, you know, like nothing lasts forever, and it kind of just captures this one moment. Yeah, I just like that we learn that lesson, but it's not like beating you over the head with it at the same time. Like, I know we're saying this is simple, but, like, you know, what's great about this is that, like, you know, it's got an interesting premise, it's got interesting characters, and just weirdo shit happens in this movie, you know, that kind of keeps you like second guessing yourself and going, it could go in various different directions, but at the end of the day, it knows what it's doing and it just executes it basically perfectly, I'd say.
Do you ever find, because with the relationship I bought it, I was like, okay, yeah, Maude's definitely good for Harold. Obviously, it's the titular relationship, so the whole movie you're waiting for Maude to rock up. But like, especially going into it, did you find like there's obviously something very wrong with Harold, and it's done to there's this great performance done by him, and like for the first little bit, I was just kind of wondering how old he was. I'm like, is he a boy? Is he a man? What age are we playing with here?
I think in the movie he's supposed to be like 17, 18. It's kind of like the right age for his mum to be setting him up to be married, you know, in like the 70s. I think that's it's roughly the age, like, or even 19, because he has a hearse. He has a car.
The actor was 23. I looked up the age because I'm like, okay, you're not 23, mate.
Yeah, and I mean, I know what you mean by the whole world is off a little bit, and I think that's what I also really enjoy about it as well, is that it's not just a straightforward, Fault in Our Stars kind of tragedy, like, it's a hopeless romance kind of thing, like, this is forever, whatever, blah. It's like, no, the movie has a sense of humor about it that is really dark and like so fucking dark to the point where it makes you laugh with just how ridiculous the way he murders himself is, like every single time. It kind of, and the movie is paced so incredibly well that it knows like when it's like, okay, Harold and Maude scene, they're gonna have a lovely intimate reaction. Okay, great. Now the next scene, his mum's getting more pissed off with him because he hasn't found a new girl. The girls that she keeps bringing in just get worse and worse and worse, and then every single time they do, he keeps killing himself in like more ridiculous fashions, you know. Like, I think one of my favorite shots in the whole movie is the one where it's the girl, she comes in, she's wearing like some ridiculous shit, like she's wearing like an ice cream sweater or something. Because
is this the actress?
Yeah. She's wearing like an ice cream sweater, and then she sits down. There's a big window behind her, and Harold like waves through the window, and he's like in a white gown or whatever, and he's like, oh yeah, and you can just see him like out of focus in the background climb onto a post, throw the white hood over himself, douse himself in gasoline, and then light himself on fire. And only she notices like well after he's like burning and dying, and it's like, she freaks out, and then Harold just walks into the room the next
That's
scene.
just his defining character trait. Like, we don't know much about Harold except he just likes to die. Like,
without spoiling it, I think there's a few scenes in there that we do kind of learn, why he is the way he is, and like those moments are probably some of my favorite in the film that we'll talk about in our spoiler section.
But I felt like it was a little bit obvious at the start how like we get it, he's trying to get his mum's attention, at least that's what I was reading into it. Like, obviously his mum won't listen to him despite the fact he's killing himself. What's with her? I feel like she's just as off as Harold.
Oh yeah,
totally.
I think the world is set up in a way where a lot of the characters just speak for themselves, like with their with who they are and their motivations, but I also think they're not entirely one-dimensional either in that sense. Like, I think there's a scene where, without spoiling anything, there's a scene where Harold kills himself, and it's very violent. A lot of the scenes beforehand, his mum's been like, oh, stop it, Harold, you'll stop killing yourself, it's not funny to me. And there's a scene where he's killed himself, but it's incredibly graphic and violent, and she actually looks affected from it. Like, this is torment to her, and I think she, in response to him doing this to himself all the time, is like, oh yeah, maybe if I set him up with a girl and that he gets on with his life, he'll grow out of these childish games that he plays with me. But it's obviously
she frames it as games.
He's just on a completely different wavelength to her, and she's just like a cranky old buzzard lady. But
I thought that character was really interesting actually, because at first I thought it was kind of she was like it was a satirical character, which I think it kind of is at the same time. Not saying she doesn't have depth. Like, there's moments in this movie where like her whole motivation is that like she wants what's best for her son, you know what I mean? Like, she's, at the end of the day, she wants what's best for him. She wants him to move forward and like live life. It's just the way she goes about it isn't taking into account what Harold has experienced in his own life and what he actually needs to be able to move on and live his life to the fullest. And so like it kind of it's this classic character of like this mum that like isn't listening to their child but is just like acting like everything's normal You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everything's normal and just trying to get through day by day. But that's kind of endearing in a way as well, like to a certain extent, because then obviously she's actually not looking at the reality of the situation.
She's
like,
sending him to a therapist though. She's acting like that.
yeah, I know, but my point is that like the kid's killing himself all the time. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and she never. There's an amazing scene in this movie where there's a questionnaire for a dating site.
Yes, I was just about to bring that up. Yeah.
For Harold, right? And so like she wants what's best for Harold, and she's like, all right, Harold, like let's do your dating, you know. And instead of just letting him fill out the form, she has this monologue basically where he just sits there in silence and does other things. And she is just filling out this form as she would for herself, and she's like, oh, you get to sleep pretty easily, Harold. Yes, I know that. That's very good.
Like,
I'll
does
fill
she?
out
Yeah,
the-
so it's a really clever scene kind of showing the way that she takes care of him by assuming that he wants the same things as she does, you know? And so, yeah, and it's obvious like that she's just completely out of touch with her kid. And he's in the meantime, while she's filling out this questionnaire, he's like loading a gun to shoot himself. And it's like, it's so methodical and
looking up.
slow. It's so like, yeah, and like that is the incredible pacing of the film is like how well directed that scene is, because it's just like we know where the comedy is always, and it never feels it never feels awkward or weird. And it's actually interesting because what happened in the production of this, I know another story, when his film got greenlit and was shooting, he put himself forward to the producer being like, I want to direct this, please let me direct it. The producer was like, okay, well how about we'll do a test and we'll see. And they did 3 separate tests, and then they went, listen, we love the script, but you cannot direct this film because it's just not going to be that funny. So they brought on the director, I forgot his name, but they brought him on, and then out of that they formed a really strong friendship, the writer and the director, and they were basically in tandem working together on this film. So I think it's a very pure experience when it comes to those guys.
I love stories like that when it comes to filmmaking and any real creative outlet, that like there comes a point in the process of like, you know, a great work of art, or you know, of anything that is at the end of the day successful. Not saying that this film was necessarily successful when it released, but I still think it's a good movie. And when you see the creators, like someone's got the idea and they know how to make it, they think they know how to make it work, and they've come up with the initial idea, they've written the script, you know, they're ready to direct, and all of a sudden sometimes what makes something great is when like it's basically collaboration. Like any collaboration I think makes anything better, and it's always great when you see something become more than what it was initially because like more people came on board and there was just a good fusion. And sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, good time on set does not equal good film.
Yeah, exactly. Like so yeah, it's almost like when there's more, not necessarily creative freedom, but like when there's people questioning your ideas, like better ideas seem to come along.
Yeah.
Yeah, when there's more, obviously to be challenged is like the best kind of creative flow.
Yeah, totally.
But I think, I just think there's something that this movie does incredibly well. And I think is like mix the zany, weird world that, you know, they've set up with really genuine, heartfelt moments and sequences and like, you know, characters that like, especially like, when Harold and Maude are really falling for each other, and the way that the film shows that, and the way that it like goes through all these different things of, you know, Harold is like a person who kills himself a lot and gets amusement out of death, and she is the complete opposite. And because of that, they bond. Like the whole, you know, they steal a tree to replant it in a forest, and she's so, you know, like attached to this idea that the tree can feel and experience what's happening, how it's being liberated right now, and it's like, it's a living
I almost
being.
think the film's mocking her, like mocking that kind of culture for it. Like it's almost like she's so anarchist and just so off the rails. It's like, it's almost like she's so like fairy like it's almost like she's not there. Like I was wondering for a second if like at the start if like Maude, if Harold was imagining her, because she is so outlandish, and I'm like, how is a woman like you, like how did you make it to your 80s? like logistically, like the way you act, how did you live for 80 years? Like
I guess if we talk anymore we'll go into spoilers.
maybe we should
totally. Can I just say one more point?
Yeah.
And it's just like a technical point of the film, and it's actually to do with the performances, namely the performance of Harold. And for me, like when I was watching the movie, I wasn't sure, and I think this is obvious obviously intentional from the filmmakers. Like, I wasn't sure like whether it was a good performance or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because like the reserved characters are sometimes like, you know, in movies, like, you know, they're kind of hard to relate to. But like the film like makes you relate to them in a way. And at a point I was like, oh, it's still got that satirical edge. It's still like, again, this movie's balancing something that's like so insane with like normal life, you know, normal experiences that everyone goes through, something that's very human. And I was like, he's not, you know, really human though. But then, like I said, like once those moments hit and like he has those human moments, which he has in the movie.
He opens up.
Totally. I just thought it was a brilliant performance. And I just wanted to say that like, even if you're watching this for the first time and you're going like, this is just bizarre, like, you know, it's just a bit off the rails, like, you know, I don't see what the point is, just know that if you stick with it, it'll, you know, and it might not. This movie isn't for everyone, obviously.
The themes are.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. But like the way it's told, it, you know, I can see people just turning this off after 10 minutes and going like, this is just fucking...
Yeah, it is one of those like, you'll know immediately if you're on board.
And it's just like, it's just really weird and stupid or whatever. But I mean, like, I'm telling you, if you stick with it, like, I think you could get something out with this and maybe think outside the box and stick with it. So,
you brought up the performances. I'll just reply to that because I like that you brought it up because I agree. I felt a little bit alienated with him at the start too because I was just looking at him going like, Christ, like the makeup made you so bloody white. Like you could almost just see him like have no blood in his veins. and he is just so stoic. But also I think because when Maude rocks up, that contrast kind of works in his favor because you see that vitality and she has more to do dialogue wise. It's kind of like, you know, he's the straight man to her like outlandishness, and I think that works in his favor. And also like,
yeah, totally.
I think I actually love his scenes with his uncle as well. I think he does great acting then as well. Who's also, and I love the uncle as well. So I think Harold's better when he's with others as opposed to like us seeing him just kind of sitting around being like, oh, life sucks.
Well, yeah, I think that's how the movie is written as well, which is to show the forces of the world that he's up against like constantly. And it's kind of also why he acts out the way that he does, because everyone that's on his side in the movie, you know, like his family and the people who are trying to fall in love with him and the people who are helping him are all just fucking nuts. Like even the girls,
you're not wrong.
Even the girls who his mum brings in for him, like a few of them are a bit, you know, like weird. And there's the actress lady who's just like, you know, off the rails. And then obviously what happens to her happens. But it's just, I think the movie is well written in that regard where it just lets the world play out for itself. And it lets a lot of great physical comedy and like, you know, just like prop comedy and visual gags really come to life. And that's, yeah. And I feel like that's just part of the charm of the thing. And yeah, I think you're right. There are not going to be, you know, not everyone is going to see this movie and go like, oh my god, it's like the new Shawshank Redemption, because if it was, then it would already have that kind of following. But yeah, I feel like it's yeah, for me anyway, I feel like this movie did something to me that basically inspired me to have a lot of hope when I was younger. And I feel like it can do that for a lot of people of a similar age as well, going through a thing.
Totally.
This feels like a more optimistic version of The Graduate in a way. It's like
I
don't know, there's such a heart to it. Yeah, I'm like, if you want to rate it, like,
you're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
This really feels like a movie you'd recommend to mates, and that's kind of exclusively how you'd find it. Like, it's like a good recipe. It's passed around, you know. You can't really look this shit up, you know. You got to find out Mama's secret ingredient in person.
Yeah, that's how I advertise this movie, is my mama's secret ingredient, Nathan. That's what I like to say.
Tell me that would not sell tickets. Like, that would sell tickets, Carter.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a thumbs up from me if we're doing the ratings now, if that's how this works.
He's kind of looking at his thumbs like, do they go up or down?
I recommend to watch this on a Thursday night, on a Friday night, on a Saturday night, on a Sunday night. I recommend watch this anytime you can. I think this is a good date film for me anyway, because it's like if I watch this with someone on a date and they don't really get it or like it, then I know there'd be an issue. Because I'd be like, this is like part of who I am. Like, it's like an attack on my identity, you fuck. But I think, I obviously I think this film is an important film. So huge thumbs up.
Yeah, and for all the reasons you guys listed, and for all the reasons I listed, I give this a thumbs up as well. Maybe if Harold's mum had a movie like this that she could just play to those dates, they would have had more luck. So yeah, thumbs up. thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think that like maybe, you know, wherever you are in life, or, you know, like maybe something else has come in your life, like another film or something else, and you've had that experience and learned from something like this. But even if you haven't, and this hits home, like you can see why it would. So thank you, Carter, for bringing this movie to our attention, because like Nathan said with his Mama's Spice comment, you know, we probably wouldn't have found it any otherwise.
No,
so.
you've brought in a good recipe, mate. We've had a good dinner, and here we are. So now that we've eaten, let's spoil this thing. You spoiled it.
What?
The movie.
Oh.
So, what was your favorite death this movie?
Oh,
Because there's a lot of fun ways this guy kills himself. Do
what was my favorite death? Oh man.
you want maybe me to start while you're thinking on it?
Yeah, you go. You go.
Of all the ways, I was not expecting seppuku to rock up at any point.
Oh yeah. I was about to say.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and he's so
That's a good one.
excited as well. With his little mat, he's like, oh, check out this.
What's amazing about that scene, though, is... Because again, like that's the final date, right?
Yeah.
And what's so great about it is more her response to it. Like, of course, like by this point we're so used to Harold and his isms and you know, like, you know, and we can see where this is going. But the fact that she's an actress, right? And she's already bonkers when she walks in and the way she's like, you know, introduces herself.
She's the best candidate so far.
Well, yeah, and then she does that ridiculous performance. Like, it's like, you know, we're talking about acting before, and it's like, you know, obviously it's a great performance because it's a great performance of bad acting, but it's like one of the worst, like, Juliets you've ever seen.
She thinks he's just doing Romeo and Juliet. Oh, it's great.
And Harold's response to that moment is fucking hilarious.
Oh.
Like, it's actually...
Such a dirty look he gives her when he like turns his head on the mat. He's like, "Excuse me." She's not buying it. Like,
yeah, totally. It's like, and like every other point when like he finally does like the gotcha moment, like throughout the rest of the movie, it's always done with a, you know, like an expecting look, you know, at the person, like, you know, are you going to react to this? And, you know, they never really do, unless unlike the other dates earlier that like obviously one goes screaming out, etc. But that look of disgust he gives her is just the best.
It's so good.
I love the twist in it, and yeah, how she I mean, well, we'll talk about it in spoilers, but yeah, it's just there's so many.
You can talk about it now.
We are in spoilers.
We are in spoilers.
Spoil away,
Okay,
mate.
yeah, how she actually kills herself, and his mom is like, okay, like, you know, like,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
and
Happened
she's
again.
just like, all right, I've had it up to here, Harold. You know, no more fancy cars or whatever. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I think my favorite death in the film is probably when his mum is reading out the questionnaire for him, when she's filling out the questionnaire for the dating thing, and it just, the scene is so incredibly well done because it feels like it could be a short in its own right. Like, it just, that scene out of context of the whole film is such a great scene because all it is just he is sitting there on a chair and he's got a box in front of him and his mum is like, all right, I need you to marry someone. I'm gonna do this. We're gonna do this thing now, Harold, and you're
Tinder
gonna,
exists in the 70s,
you know, be
apparently.
cooperative and you're gonna listen to me. And the whole time while she's in this monologue and she's like basically being Harold for him, he's like slowly opening this case, taking a 44 Magnum out, like loading bullets into, just slowly loading the bullets into it. And there's a moment where he presses the gun to his head and then he thinks about it and he like turns to his mum and he like points the gun at her and she's so engrossed in doing her own bullshit, like doing this questionnaire. She doesn't even notice that he's holding a gun at her. And then he's like, you know what? Just to fucking spite you, I will kill myself. Like, I won't even bother like shooting you. And it's like, it's so dark.
It is so
But there's
stupid.
something about that is so funny.
Agreed. Yeah.
And it's just, I think that's my favorite because for a moment it plays with you a little bit and your expectations of Harold, and you're like, okay, like, yeah, this guy really is a bit of a loose unit, and it is all thanks to his mum and her like weirdness with him and their relationship, and yeah, it's cool.
I'll bring up a couple, one death and just another moment that I think is brilliant that are similar to these ones. I agree. I think like if we're looking at a scene that kind of encapsulates the movie, I think that revolver scene is pretty brilliant. And I agree. The moment that got me was when he pointed at his own mother and then just kind of was like, oh, well, I guess we'll just try this one again.
Yeah.
But for me, you mentioned this scene before, Carter, but just like from a filmmaking perspective, this scene is brilliant. The first date when that girl comes in and she's all excited and she spots Harold through the window and his mom goes, oh, that's Harold, and Harold's like in his garb and she gives him the wave and then he kind of does the point at her and point at mom like, oh, is that the date? Oh, and he does like the nice wave back to her and she goes, oh, he's really nice. You know,
Yeah.
he seems really nice. It's a great line. The mum then says, "Oh, thank you." Like, it's so fucking great. Anyway, so then they sit down and they're just having, they're having a conversation. And again, these scenes are brilliant because the mum like interviews like these dates
So
before they
weird.
meet her son each time as well. It's brilliant. And in the background, you just see, the setup of the gasoline. He sets himself alight. But the moment that gets me is actually her reaction, which is a delayed response. And then he, she sees that he's burning himself alive. He comes in alive and well and is like ready to start the date. And she just like doesn't even take this person in. That's like actually him in the flesh, like in the room. She just ignores the fact that he's there, is so overcome by like the burning stake outside that she just like runs from the building. And there's this moment, I can't remember if this was the moment, but I think it was the moment where he looked down the lens. Like he just turned to the camera and was like, looked down the lens and was like, yeah, fuck my life, right? Like,
This another day.
happens all the time. And I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. And again, kind of encapsulates that character in a way that's just really interesting and entertaining. But the other scene I wanted to say that I think the most laugh out loud moment I had in the movie was the second date, which is when he's just sitting at the desk and he just pulls out the meat cleaver and just like cleaves off his hand. Like,
Oh my god.
like he just like it takes a couple of bangs and it just like kind of breaks off and he's just like, yeah, anyone up for sandwiches? And then like
Because he gives it a few whacks and like doesn't really do anything. I'm like, is this like a rubbery fake one? But then obviously he just cuts it off, and I'm like, what's going on here?
I thought it was brilliant. And the way that the girl, like, again, like the reactions from the girls are just brilliant because like she's just kind of quizzically like, oh, this is real. Oh, I'm gonna leave now. And then just like hard cuts to her like driving away. Brilliant. So funny.
It's so
Love
but
that.
I never understood this. Like, how is he pulling all these off? Like, some of them should clearly kill him. Like, is he supernatural?
It's not explained, and I feel like it doesn't need to be explained. I feel like that's what makes the movie so awesome in a way. It was like the fact that the movie is just so prepared to be like, fuck it, we don't need to tell you anything about it. This is just the way things are. This is how the characters interact with the world. And it doesn't treat you like an idiot. It's just like, just deal with it.
Totally. As long as things like that are consistent, it's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you like, again, it's an interesting way to like get you into it that you're like, oh, like I'm trying to understand this, but that's not actually the point of what I need to understand. What I need to understand is this character and why he's doing this. You know what I mean? So again, it kind of like, it takes you on that journey as an audience member that you're going, I think like Nathan, like you said, like at first I'm going, oh, like for instance, in the opening scene, the hanging scene, which is just brilliant because the main character hangs himself and you're like, oh gosh, are we going to do a flashback now of like how we got to this point in his life? Who's
Like
Maude?
double
Like,
indemnity, yes.
how does she fit into this
It was a
equation?
cold night.
Yeah, totally. And then again, she walks in, she just acknowledges that he's there, and you're like, oh, maybe she's in shock and she just doesn't want to admit that it's happening. She's like, oh, Harold, like, why are you doing this again? And he starts the choking thing. And I was like, oh, this is brilliant. And then from there on, each death, like again, like I thought that was obviously staged or whatever. And then each one I was going, is this guy actually indestructible? Or is he a magician? You know what I mean?
It turns into like Unbreakable. He has that like Bruce Willis moment. It's like, maybe I should use this for good. Like,
Yeah.
Totally. But again, that doesn't matter at the end of the day because what matters is that this guy needs to come of age and learn to move on from the horrors of his past. And no matter, how he chooses to live his life, just live it and be, content.
he's a little bit fucked up though. Like, he gets a little bit too excited about...
Oh, totally.
When he tries to join the military, he has this, like, full minute being like, can we kill bodies? Like, can we, like, collect their dead shit? Like, I'm like,
Yeah, well, I think, and that's obviously, like, set up so his uncle is, like, freaked scared by him,
Yeah,
and it's like...
Totally.
And it's such a... I think it's like, it's really clever how he's able to manipulate people throughout the movie, and he's such a silent character... And he uses that as a weapon, in a way. And all it does in service is that he is becoming more open and honest with himself and like around people and around Maude, And I think that's what's great is like the more time he spends in love with someone, the more he realizes that he can kind of just love himself and it's not like an issue anymore. Because... the only thing I would argue against the movie is like, oh, does Harold actually grow and do his actions reflect that growth, And it's like, well, you could say no, because he does just keep killing himself a lot, but at the same time, I would say that scene where he fucks with his uncle is a huge thing, because at first he's quite intimidated by his uncle, and then the next time they have an interaction and it's like, oh, Harold, you're going away to military school, blah, 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 blah. He basically pulls this most ridiculous stunt on him and just tries to freak him out to the point where he accidentally murders Maude, because I think on the IMDb page, it says that I used to think it was because he's indestructible, but now rewatching watching it, I do think he's just staging the like incredibly elaborate deaths, because he stages the one with Maude, and then his uncle just lets him go because he's like, you just killed someone, I'm not gonna let you in the fucking military, and we're not gonna talk about it, we're just gonna pretend like it doesn't matter, because
just gonna sweep it under the rug, like they do,
because you're a rich person, it doesn't matter. It's like and it's such a good setup for that. It's like you just need to know what that world is like, and it's like, yep, just don't worry about it.
Look, it's an interesting question to say, does this protagonist grow, or does he go on a journey, and does he learn something from this experience? And I think, personally, clearly, yes. The last shot of this movie is him having learnt the banjo and walking away,
He learns the banjo, character arc complete.
But exactly, I think it's a great point. Like, he kind of lets go of just having that one thing in his life that he's committed to. And you know what I mean? Like, learning an instrument, or experiencing music, bringing these things that kind of connect us as human beings, I think is an interesting idea. That, that he comes in and he actually takes up something and he commits himself to something else.
And it's something that Maude gave him, like it's it's a whole expression of like these people that we love, and our relationships change, and yes, even when the thing is over for whatever reason, we have these things that are imparted to us, like in one way or another. And
she does the whole Yoda voice. It's like, pass on what you have learned. It's passes over the banjo.
Yeah, you will become Cat Stevens.
Yeah,
I really hope this movie's like a prequel to like Deliverance. Like, he just walks onto like a little shack with his banjo and he just starts strumming. Like,
I was just thinking like this could be the Sufjan Stevens origin story, but I think he's I really love the ending of the movie and the bittersweetness of it. And just how, oh god,
he still stages a fake death though. Like, that's his last.
Yeah, he does as like a last.
Yes and no.
You don't think he does?
Is it a fake death? Is it okay? So for me, is it a fake? Again, we look at the objects in this movie. That car is mentioned so many fucking times in the movie, right?
Yeah.
His car. His mum mentions it. She tries to buy him a new car. He blowtorches the new car. It just keeps getting brought up. Him and Maude discuss it a lot. It's like, at their second meeting, I think they're in the car and he's like, "This is my car." Like it's brought up a lot. And the last scene, he destroys the car, right?
It's like a metaphor. He's like, no more car time.
I think so. I think it is a metaphor. I think it's like him just kind of doing away with that. You know what I mean? And he picks up his banjo and he walks off, and it's very metaphorical in the sense of like, he's kind of completed that arc and he's ready to live. It's kind of, I think it kind of like, as an audience member, I think you're like, oh, he's staging another death, but I don't know if it's that necessarily. I think it's just him driving the car off the cliff and going like, well, there goes that car, there goes that part of my life, and on to the next thing, and I feel like I'm ready to move on.
I think as well, because the idea of Maude in a way is that she's such an important force. She's a free spirit. She kills herself because she actually kills herself because she reaches a point in her life where she's like, I know what I want, and what I want is for the end. I actually want to die.
Which is weird for a movie advocating life.
Yeah, well, advocating love and and free living, but it is also very much about free choice. And she makes the choice of I'm going to die. I'm going to make this for me. I'm going to do this as a way of as a part of my free spirit. And the one thing that Harold obviously can't take is the fact that he could lose this one thing that he holds on to so dearly. And her whole thing is that you don't need to hold on to anything because you're in a constant state. You're in a constant state of flow, and it's such a beautiful message because it's strangely like it's very spiritual. It's like, don't hold on to all this weird shit, like how your mum holds on to all these standards and all this money and this this life that means nothing really. And Maude is living this life of complete bliss because she's just totally let go of everything and is just experiencing everything the way that she wants to by her own design. And it's and it's incredible. It's like, yes. And that's what he kind of does at the end with the car, is like, fuck it, I don't need to hold on to anything either. I am reborn.
In saying that, like, you watching this movie, having watched it the one time or whatever, I didn't know how to feel about Maude at the end and like how she ended and how she chose to end her own life. And I get what you're saying. It's very spiritual, and people, like, for me, when I first met Maude, I assumed, like, for whatever reason, and I think this is kind of intentional, that I think Maude personally is terminally ill through this movie. I think she's like,
oh, she knows. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like she wants to go out on her own terms. That's kind of what I
Well, she
took
says
it
80
as.
though. It sounds like she's had that idea for a while. Like 80's just the date. Like
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I don't know whether she's always been like this necessarily. Like, we never find out the backstory of Maude.
we get one hint,
which is a good choice, I think.
which I didn't actually like. I thought when they threw in the little concentration camp tattoo, I thought they didn't explore that enough to justify it being there.
I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to explore the background of that character. I don't think it's that important.
I kind of didn't want it to be there. I didn't want this film to show us that she was an Auschwitz survivor.
I think that the reason it's like, but it does give it impetus to the way of the fact that she is, in order to become the way that she has become, she has to have experienced a lot of tragedy and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of heartbreak to get to a point of self-actualization and comfort with himself, you know. And I think that was just like a very quick way of being like, this person, it has a lot more to their past than you think they do. And this is something that
totally.
And it's cool because it's like Harold, you know, for all that he wants her for, it's like it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter to her necessarily, because she's just a very small part of her joy that she's learnt to experience. And and you can't help but kind of sympathize with both, where it's like when I watched this the first time, I was like, Maude, why would you fucking kill yourself? Like, no, this is hell. And now that I've watched it a second time, you know, or watched it a couple times now, I'm like, oh, actually, I completely am on Maude's side, like the whole way through. I think that's what the benefit of rewatching it does for you, because you know what's coming, and so you're just like, oh man, like I totally love her and the way that she is portrayed in the way, and what she does and the way she acts and how freaky she is and how she just doesn't care, because it just kind of lends credence to that idea of letting go of everything.
Look, I agree with everything you said about what the film's trying to represent and whatnot. And like, Carter, I think you summed it up perfectly. For me, my conflict with the movie stems from that like final choice of hers, because like it is in total conflict to, I guess, my own morality, you know, in the sense of like, no matter what, like I like, you know, like I think it's and I think the movie, like, it would have been interesting, not necessarily because I think it's perfect in terms of like, again, what it's chasing, the ideas of what it's trying to tell. Everything that happens in the movie is perfect to reach that end point. But at the same time, like, you know, I don't think I could like advocate, you know, what the decision she makes at the end of the movie. Like,
yeah, but not morally. Like we're asking, just like narratively, does it work?
That's what I'm saying. It works narratively, but it would have been interesting to see Harold, you know, grieve a bit more and to deal with, like, you know, the repercussions of Maude's choice, which, you know, would have and it does, you know, don't get me wrong, the film hints it again, like it does cover it, but like that's a big thing. It would have been nice to have explored just a bit more time.
It is funny because the film treats death so comedically for when you like go, oh, what's Harold gonna do next as far as like his suicide. So when we get a real actual suicide, it's, you know what I mean? It's like when you've been having the same joke, then suddenly a real one happens, like, oh no. And the film just so jarringly shifts its position on it. But I think you're right in the sense that it makes it its best point because of it. Like when she tried to kill herself, I wasn't so heartbroken. And maybe it's because I really debated the whole movie if I wanted them to turn romantic, because I don't think they had to for him to learn what he needed to learn. I think it could have purely been a friendship.
Yeah, I mean, it was a friendship, and I would argue that it was, you know, like, I mean, there are many versions of a friendship, and I think that was a very romantic friendship as well, that eventually, you know, that blossomed into what it was very briefly for Harold. And I know what you mean by like the tone shifts. And yeah, like, and of course I agree with you, man. Like, I don't advocate for suicide either. I think it's a horrible thing.
Totally. I wasn't insinuating that at all.
I get what you mean. Like, morally, of course you feel, I mean, yeah. And I think that's also a thing that the film, in its defense, does do well, is it treats that part of it quite seriously. And then when the car goes off the cliff and you see Harold there, it's like, yeah, oh look, it's another joke, but the joke kind of has a whole new feeling to it now. And I think the filmmakers recognize that, and that's where that ending comes into it, of him going off and playing the banjo. And it's like, it's got this, it doesn't have like a pointing haha, like, you know, funny, you know, jovial, like kind of whoa, crazy zaniness to it like the rest of the movie does. It's actually got quite more of a somber message to that aspect of, or to that part of the narrative. And I think I think for me, that's where that part of it stands up, and that's why I can agree with it in a way. Is it's like it's treated in a very logical and meaningful sense. But I do agree with that, and I think, yeah, I don't know, man. I love Maude so much that I feel like, yeah, that decision makes sense in my head.
It's very interesting hearing you that like you love Maude, because you could say watching this movie she's an objectively bad person. She commits all the crimes, and yet you love her. Like,
but then it gets you to ask questions where it's like, well, what are these crimes that she is committing anyway? Like she's just like living life, being like, I have a moral code. I want things to go the way that I want them to go, and her moral code isn't like evil or sinister. She just does things that are against the law. Like she uproots a tree, she steals a bunch of cars, she like does a bunch of shit because she just feels like it.
she's a bit like the Joker in that sense.
But it's like, why are these laws there in the first place, and what are they actually doing? And like, yeah, it's a whole other discussion, I think.
I can say, I agree. There's a whole other discussion there, but I think what makes her, I think her redeeming quality is her honesty. You know what I mean? She's never dishonest.
Yeah.
She never,
Yeah.
she's always up. It's like with the police officer. She's very upfront. She said, look, I stole this car. It's not mine. This tree, I uprooted and whatnot. I'm going to plant it, whatever.
He's like,
and we never
what?
see like, she never keeps the car. She never keeps the property either.
Yeah,
she uses it for what she has to use, and then she dumps it. She's like, yeah, I did what I had to do. And I'm not advocating for breaking the law. We understand why those laws are in place, but again, narratively, it's just exploring. This character's just exploring like these ideas and whatnot, and like why these laws are kind of in place. And she's just a free spirit. She's just using what she needs to at the time, and then moving forward.
And I think that ties into the whole her death at the end, which is that, yeah, she just does what she wants to without necessarily a moral compass on the issue, because she's just like, I am choosing to live my life this way. I've chosen 80 as the day that I want to go, so that's how it's going to be. And it's like, and Harold unfortunately has to go through that, kind of, naively goes through it, because he's learning how committed she is to this part of herself as we're learning it too. And I think that's, if anything, that's the gift that she gives to him, is this idea, is like, you can be yourself and you can enjoy your life no matter what happens.
I think it makes Harold really, let's say, understand and respect death. You know what I mean, as well. Like it probably gives him a new outlook on it as well.
Yeah, you could argue he's being immature about it.
You could, and you know what's interesting? We've spoken at length that Harold throughout this whole movie like has hardly any dialogue, and it's all kind of reactionary to like what these events that like either he commits or whatever's going on in each of these scenes. But I just want to bring up one scene, which is like basically, let's call it Harold's monologue, where we learn Harold's background, basically, which is a brilliant scene. It's brilliantly acted, and it's a great moment between those two characters, and it's really the moment that their relationship shifts, I think.
It's like after they have shisha.
Listening to that story of him experiencing, what it was to die, basically, and to come back and see his mother grieve for him, and like these people, kind of trying to accept the loss of himself, and when he breaks down in that scene, it's such an emotional, moment that, that just hits you. And then what I think is even more special about that moment is the way that, Maude reacts to it, that she says, I understand, like, I understand that obviously that's fucked up and you've been through that, but like, there's a finality to life, and, you got to accept that, and you've got to like, respect that and move forward and enjoy the journey.
She's got that really strong message of live your life the way you want to live it. And that's kind of Harold's conflict is in the beginning, is that he's trapped in a position of his life where he feels like he can't, because he's surrounded by his mum who's making him do the stuff, surrounded by his uncle who's making him do this other stuff, and the whole time Harold never just goes, I don't want to do this, I'm objecting to it, blah 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 blah. He kind of just plays into it and makes fun of it his own way without ever necessarily addressing the issue head on. And I think it's because he's never found someone or found a way to express that to someone that would make sense to them, which is what is so great about that scene, is it's like it's the first time he's ever had that opportunity to actually show that part of himself to a person who gets it and who loves him for that. And she it goes both ways, and it's like, it's a beautiful scene.
All that being said, do we want to get into some special segments?
Special segment.
Ooh, so special. I'll throw it to Brenton first, maybe. Brenton, who should have died in this movie?
There's an obvious answer here. If we're going by the laws of nature, Harold probably should have died at some point in this film. You know what I mean? Like we're saying before that obviously, like, we think he stages these deaths and whatnot, but
That'd
who
be
knows?
so funny. Just like accidentally one of them actually does work.
But you know what? I'd imagine it's pretty difficult to drive a car off a cliff and just like roll out at the exact moment where you also, not only like a car going at high speed, we roll out so you don't like kill yourself. Like when you roll out of the car, car or grievously injure yourself. But like, you know, you don't also like roll after the car off the cliff. Like it's a pretty talented guy that he manages to, you know.
He's got a career in it, you know. He could do well at like circus shows or something.
Yeah, he's the next Houdini. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The Prestige is actually based on him.
Maybe the twist at the end of this movie, they do the whole Prestige twist at the end. There's like 30 million Harolds that have like constantly like, you know, dying, and he's like the next like copy of Harold or whatever.
If we had to rewrite the movie for whatever reason, and it was like you can't have that ending, or like Maude can't die. Who should have died? I think either the uncle could have died, and that like that part where Maude dies, and if if that part went wrong, like, you know, him setting up the death went wrong, and it turned out the uncle actually accidentally fell down the hole and he died or something, and it's like, oh fuck, you know, like that could turn into a whole other movie. That would be, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, obviously not ideal for what the film's trying to do, but I still think like, okay, if you're gonna make this into like a TV show or something, it'd be like really. That'd be kind of a juicy little thing to put in there, but yeah, I don't necessarily think that anyone needs to die. I think it's fine.
Nathan, what about you?
Oh, I was kind of hoping the mum, to be honest. Like, I wanted her to cork it. Or even I even thought for a second the actress date would have been killed. Like, accidentally, it is a real knife. Like, it's somehow she's not invincible, and then she kills herself, and the mum's like, oh, for fuck's sake! Like, now we actually have a real dead body we got to take care of.
But that's what I thought did happen in that scene with the actress when she does stab herself, because it doesn't go into it afterwards, and it's
so
like,
you do think she is dead in the movie?
I don't know. I like to think that, because they sweep the death of Maude with the uncle so easily under the rug. Like they could do it with her as well, you know. And
there's like a whole collection of bodies in that house we don't know about.
I think so. I don't know, man. Like, you know, she's got military ties. Like she's rich. You know, it's like, yeah.
By the way, what an odd house. Just putting it out there. Every room is incongruous with the whole building. Like,
oh yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, agreed.
Just a bad house.
Nathan, you suggested another special segment, which I thought was interesting, and it was, would this work as a video game? And I wanted to give you that question straight away since you brought it up, because I don't know if it would work as a video game. But Nathan, do you have a video game in mind?
Yeah.
For Harold and Maude?
I don't know. I kind of like the idea that, like, you know, over a video game, it's like a dating simulator, but like, you know, you gotta instead of like, you know, you trying to get with the date, you have to try and kill yourself in elaborate ways. So you're trying to looking around the room for like hints of things that you could like whack yourself with, and then get to the next level, and it's just like a whole house filled with dates. You just kind of got to make your way out.
It's a point and click adventure game where like you're choosing like the way you die in various circumstances, and the way you can like, maybe there's like a horror meter, and like the way you can like most horrify your potential date. You know what I mean? Like you know, you learn out some background information. You learn she's scared of snakes, and you're like, all right, well, death by snake is how I'm going today or whatever. And so you like organize an elaborate snake pit or something that you drop yourself into. I don't know.
What about you, Carter?
No, I think you're right. I think, yeah, it could be like a dating sim or like a visual novel in that sense.
Yes.
But it could be a visual, yeah, it could be like a novel where it's like half of the game is scenes with Maude, where you're learning more about the character and you're caring about him more, and then the other half of the game is like, you know, like a Octodad kind of sim, or like a simulator or something, where it's like, yeah, it's just like, fuck this room up. Like, fuck it up. You've got all these things at your disposal, just go AWOL, and the idea is to spook whoever the lady is, you know, in the room. Or like there's like there was a game that's called Save the President, and essentially what you do is you have to jump in front of the bullet every time it comes for the president, and every time that you do it, it's like, it gets, the way the levels are set up gets more and more elaborate, and your main character is a ragdoll, and you have to like fucking like boogie yourself along the ground and like throw yourself in front of the bullet as it's coming at him.
That sounds like an awesome game. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's like $1 on Steam. It's amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I think like something like that, where it could be like a half visual novel, half sim. That's the only way
I'd buy it.
Possibly see it.
You're just on Steam, you see Harold and Maude the game.
I don't always love this segment on the show, but should this movie be a musical? So
I think it could work.
I'll start this off with the premise that, look, I'll start by saying that not every fucking movie needs to be a musical, right? But that being said, being said, I mean, like, I see your point, Nathan. It could potentially
It's operatic.
work. You know what I
You
mean?
got all these elaborate death scenes. Imagine like a chorus in the background. Bloody holding knives. Like it could work.
Oh God, you just turned me off completely with the chorus holding knives.
No, because you know what? You'd have the
no.
music by Cat Stevens in this, so you wouldn't change the soundtrack. And you just you got them like going on dates and that kind of stuff. You got a giant tree you got to fit on stage. It could work.
Yeah, they have the romantic duet over the piano when they discover their love for music, and Harold.
I think if this movie was turned to a musical, it could potentially turn to a nightmare. I feel like it's like on the cusp of being too much, that it's able to ride the sincerity in the film, because it's almost a bit too much, but it's like, just because it's not that much, it's okay. I can believe these people. I can believe the feelings that they have. If it goes to a musical,
Throw
it's
Broadway
like,
into the
Jesus,
mix.
this is like, it's gonna go off the deep end,
It'd be like a Springtime for Hitler kind of situation that like produces it, where it'd just be like over the top.
Yeah. It'd be a little too Mel Brooks at that point, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that's my thoughts on it. Please don't make it into a musical. Just
as long as it retains the same theme, which I agree, it'd be really hard to just like, because like, a Broadway show's got such a specific theme, and Americans have got such a specific idea for like, comedy, you know what I mean, especially in music theater, that like, if you brought that into it, I feel like it would kind of ruin the gold mine that this movie struck. So yeah, look, I don't think it's impossible. Whether it's a good musical is the question.
You can see like all the dates coming at Harold at once, like the dance choreographers, they're all trying to like ask him questions. It's like the opening to Book of Mormon.
God,
like
you're turning me off every time you describe this show. I'm just like, oh God, no.
Or call
Please,
Tom
no.
Hooper, I'll make it happen.
Hey, let's get to everybody's favorite segment on the show. What stills this movie?
it's blinding.
Mate, What Stills This Movie is a segment on the show where either Nathan or myself choose a still, a single frame from the film we are reviewing. And we choose this on the basis of something that's entertaining, something that's funny, something that's intriguing, something
Something that gets Brendan choked up.
Oh gosh, something that, brings me to tears. Something that may just be a beautiful piece of cinematography that's been captured and we just want to talk about it. Can you describe this for us, Nathan?
The still today, it's one of those rare occasions where like it's a really beautiful thing I want to point out, and also you get this in a lot of movies. You get a lot of like what it is. It's like it's more than Harold in a graveyard, and it's like what you get in a lot of movies where they're in graveyards and you see all these like identical graves kind of in a row, and you kind of see them surrounded by death. And I thought it was a gorgeous shot, but like in the same sense, like as they're like looking around all these graves, I thought it was a really good shot that kind of underpins the themes of the movie. How like these two are kind of like dancing around all these different graves. Like,
you know what? I think I agree with you. I think the editing is what makes this scene specifically so special. So we have Maude with the flowers, right? And so we do a cut from that to this shot, which then, because this isn't just the shot, right? We don't just stay on this singular image. It zooms out, right?
Yeah.
We have this massive zoom out that happens basically, and what ends up being this still that we've got here at the moment ends up expanding and being like, I think it's the top right corner of the screen by the end of
you can
the
barely make them
expansive
out.
shot of this graveyard. So we have this beautiful juxtaposition of Maude talking about life and the beauty of life and her flowers and whatnot, right? And then we just hard cut to like her and Harold in the midst of this graveyard, and we kind of find the beauty and the finality of it again. And so yeah, it's a great moment in the movie that the visual storytelling is on point as to what this movie is kind of about and what it's trying to get at.
Have you ever been to graveyards this big before?
Yeah, I have. I've seen graveyards this big in Adelaide actually.
Oh wow!
There's a bunch of massive old graveyards. Yeah, not specifically like this, like not with identical gravestones.
This makes me think it's a military graveyard if they're all the same.
Yes and no, potentially. Like again, like I wonder where this movie is actually set. You know what I mean? Like towards the end of this movie, I was wondering where we actually were. Like
they shot it in San Fran, right? I think it's meant to feel like placeless though in that way. Like this could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Do you like this pick, Carter?
Yeah, I think this shot's beautiful. I think there are a lot of different shots that happen throughout the movie that are just incredible. And yeah, and I mean, I love a good slow zoom. I was watching Time Bandits last night with Sophie, and that's got plenty of zooms, so that's quite fun. But I think, I mean, like, yeah, like you just said, it's got everything that you need. All, you know, the symbolism, all the lovely imagery, and completely what the message of the film is about. And, you know, her, and what she's saying over the top of the scene is beautiful as well, where it's about the importance of life. And yeah, and they're just dancing in a fucking graveyard, and it's like, okay, nice.
Yeah, out of context it wouldn't look that good, but yeah.
Probably didn't describe that as well as you did, but yeah, no.
So yeah, let's look at the poster then. Banter.
Yes.
Let's look at this film's poster.
But is it art?
One of the best things about reviewing old movies is that old movies just nail their posters so well. And in saying that, look at this one here. It's a poster of Harold and Maude. They're hand drawn, and they're carrying like literally everything they will use to kill in this movie.
You know what? I think this is a brilliant poster. I think it's perfect for the film. I think it captures the tone of what it's going for. I love the artistry of the way these guys are drawn. I like the image itself. I like the text. You know what I mean? Like, this is Harold, fully equipped to deal with life. This is Maude, Harold's girlfriend. Like, it just kind of says it all. And so, like, immediately it kind of, again, like the movie does, it grabs your attention. You're like, that doesn't seem right. Look at what they're holding. He's equipped to deal with life. Is he going to take on the world? Is he going to, you know what I mean? Is that a noose? Like, you know, it raises these questions, but at the same time, it just captures that tone, which I think is, you know, would have been hard to do, like to nail a poster for this film.
I think it's smarter having it hand drawn as well, because like, especially from a marketing perspective, like trying to ship this very age gap couple would be tricky. So, like, I think this kind of subdues that a little bit.
It's just beautifully drawn. I mean, like, I wish I had a poster like this for my film. It's gorgeous.
I you know what? Like, I say this on the show sometimes, Carter. I say, you know, there's posters that you want to hang on your wall. I wouldn't mind hanging that on my wall. You know what I mean? I wouldn't mind having a copy of that poster and just having it hanging there, frame it, put it on the wall. Harold and Maude.
I love as well, like he's just so happy. We rarely see him smile in this movie, and he's just so chuffled. You know, he's just so happy he's got all these little weapons. He's like, oh, I'm going to commit death today.
It's very cute. It's like, oh,
there they are.
Just like, I don't even necessarily look at the weapons and think it's a bad thing. I'm just really in love with the artistry. I think it's really lovely.
So title talk.
Ooh, it's the title.
So were Harold and Maude in Harold and Maude?
Yeah, man.
They were there, weren't they?
We got what we paid for. You know what I mean?
I wanted to see Harold and Maude, and goddamn did they deliver.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a better title for this film.
Yeah,
do you? I think it's pretty spot on.
Death Boy and Life Lady.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh.
Can you imagine like a poster similar to like Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but like Death Boy and Life Lady? Like,
someone Photoshop that together. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Please do it. Please do it.
Robert Rodriguez like announces the sequel where like Shark Boy and Lava Girl just try and kill each other. It's just like
Deaf Dude, Life Lass, and the Stink of Ass. I don't know. I think it's I don't know, man. I kind of wish that the name was a little more memorable than just Harold and Maude. Then more people might just watch it. But I think it.
Maybe like the life and death of Harold and Maude, or like
Harold and Maude, great.
Also, good choice of names, Harold and Maude. You know, there's a real ring to it, isn't it, with their choice of character names?
It's like the most 70s sounding names I've ever fucking heard on a movie poster. It's like, oh yeah, all right.
Someone thinking like, oh, Harold and Maude, that lovely film. Like, yeah, it's probably about some nice couple.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I remember when Mum asked me to watch this movie, she was like, oh, Harold and Maude, and I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't like into it. I wasn't like, oh, that's very exciting. Yeah, like the movie I just saw last night, like Time Bandits. Yeah, hooked me up. That shit sounds great.
Oh, shall we pass it to the people?
Pass it here.
What?
The power to the people.
So on the Rotten Tomatoes, listeners, where you know we get the other opinions. This score's got a critical consensus of 84%, and the audiences gave it 93%. So people are bloody throwing roses at the left, right, center. But interestingly, yeah, when it came out, it was not critically received well, and it bombed. It took 12 years for the movie to make back its money later in 1983.
Whoa.
So I wonder why this wasn't critically received at the time.
I think it's the thing of what I was saying before. I think like, you know, we all took to this, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know what I was in for, but at the same time I took to that. I didn't know if audiences of the 70s would have necessarily been prepared for a movie like this.
Yeah, maybe also because we've seen wacky things since. Like this is probably not the wackiest film I've seen yet so far, and that's probably due to latter work that's been made.
I don't know.
I feel like Wes Anderson took a lot from this, as far as like that like nonchalance during tragedy kind of times.
I just think for the time it probably would have been a bit. It's really strange to know what does and doesn't do well in this era, because you know you'll see a movie like this not do particularly well, and then you'll see something like Clockwork Orange, which is arguably way more intense and way more fucked and problematic, of course, you know. So it's a bit like, yeah, is it crazy enough, you know? Because maybe that's what people why people might have seen this film and might have thought, oh, that's a bit, you know, milquetoast, without actually just seeing it for what it is and being like, oh yeah, this film's got a really beautiful message.
And you look at other movies like of like the 70s that like, like in saying that, the 70s like had wild films, you know what I mean? Like Rocky Horror Picture Show came out in the 70s and like fucking everyone frothed on that, you know what I mean? Like it was, I don't know what the marketing was like for this film, like I don't know how much money was spent on that avenue.
Yeah, there's a bunch of factors, I guess, to it. So it's interesting seeing what people reviewed it these days, because like starting off with TV Guide, they liked it. They gave it 3.5 out of 4, and they wrote a doggedly eccentric film, which some will reject out of hand, others will find it profoundly moving and life-affirming. So like maybe it was just that divisivism that kind of comes with it. Like maybe like people would have walked out, or
I think anyone would walk out of this.
Yeah.
I just think some people will get it, some won't. It's just how it is. I don't think there's necessarily because it's playing into a sense of humor that is not going to align with everybody's taste, and it's also not a film that you can switch off on necessarily and enjoy it, because there are scenes that are incredibly intense in a performing aspect. I mean, these bad reviews though, fuck them. I just like, I'm looking at them like yeah, I understand, but I mean, come on, like, ugh. Anyway.
Well, so let's look at someone who did get it, which was David Parkinson from Empire Magazine. He just has a comment saying that they remain among cinema's most disconcerting odd couples.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an odder couple I've seen before. Like, this is definitely up there, right?
Is it though? I find them kind of strangely endearing.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's like, yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah, the movie is playing on that interesting alignment, I guess, and not many other films do that.
Do you wish rom-coms these days would do it? Like we had a rom-com Harold and Maude.
You mean like the Criterion classic Jack and Jill 2010
obviously
masterpiece? Yeah, I don't know, man. So this is a bad review. Average, really. I see what they were trying to do and say, but sadly in an unfunny and dull way. Well, fuck you very much. No, I don't know. Yeah. Obviously, didn't strike a chord with the young boy.
The worst review comes from Jim G. He gave it 1.5 stars, and this is a long one, so bear with us, listeners. And he argues, I like my humor black, but this bizarre film doesn't even contain one laugh. Copious weed appears to have been smoked by the director and writers. The Maude character, designed as a screwball enchantress, is an annoying flake. That anybody would be charmed by her isn't credible. Harold's mock suicides become predictable and tedious, lurches to a halt so predictably you could get a feeling the budget ran out and the studio shut production down, giving the company until tomorrow to come up with an ending. Any ending has nonetheless inexplicably attained cult status. So there's a lot going on in there.
Yeah, look, Jim G, like, I just don't agree with this. You know what I mean? Like each sentence, I'm like, well, I don't agree with that. I don't, that doesn't even contain one laugh. Again, like it's.
I can understand how for some people it could just going back and forth between Maude suicide, maybe could be a little bit sing-songy for some people.
Yeah, look, and if this film doesn't tickle your funny bone, as to say, like, it doesn't, you don't share the same sense of humor of that, this really dark sense of humor, like, people just won't get on board with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'll be turned off straight away.
They'll wash their hands.
Maybe Jimmy G was just turned off.
Yeah, Jim G, the film guru that he is. I think, yeah, man, I don't know. I think this dude's this just really is not his satay sauce for his fucking noodles, man. He does not like this movie, and we can't help you.
No.
Sorry, Jim G, you're lost to us. You're dead.
He's a victim of Harold.
Yeah, no, I don't know. This dude's problems are probably with himself.
Oh, well.
So that's all I'm gonna say.
Welcome to the club.
I like this next comment. It's a comment from YouTube, and it's from La. What is that photo? That La's. Oh, it's upside. Okay, it's them upside down looking at a
what a life to
okay,
live.
Cool, La. Cool profile pic. Sick. If they ever make a reboot, I want Asa Butterfield and Julie Walters. Now, look, this movie doesn't need a reboot. Not every movie needs a reboot. We've established that it still holds up today. But Asa Butterfield and Julie
not gonna
Walters,
lie,
like,
he
I don't
looks
know.
identical to Asa Butterfield right now.
No, he does not.
Mate. Get a
Fuck
fucking
off.
Google image
No,
of
he
that. Like,
doesn't.
Harold looks identical to Asa Butterfield.
Asa Butterfield also not a good enough actor, I think, to pull off
Whoa!
this
Here comes the
personally.
real shade, mate. He was almost going to be Spider-Man, He was in contention with Tom Holland for that.
Yeah, and guess what? He wasn't, because the casting director went, "Oh yeah, better not cast that shit."
Wow, I don't know where this Asa Butterfield hate's
That was
coming
so
from.
harsh.
Brent.
That was harsh. Look, I don't hate the guy. Like he's okay. Like, some of his child performances are alright. You watch The Boy with the Striped Pajamas, and you're like, oh yeah, he's doing the job. But
Was he the guy in Bandersnatch?
Oh, as in like the programmer?
Yeah.
No, that's a
Or
different
am I
actor.
thinking of someone different?
Yeah. That's a Butterfield. Yeah, this boy in striped pajamas. He's done a bunch of weird projects. Like, was he in Ender's Game? I want to say.
He was in Ender's
Yeah.
Game. He was Ender in Ender's Game. Yeah.
Oh.
That's why like Harrison Ford's like you have the gift, like every other like YA story, right? Like
Yeah, he had the gift.
He had the gift.
He had it. He certainly had
There's
it.
every YA something.
Not sure what the gift was, but it wasn't a good
I
one.
can't believe they got ripped Harrison Ford into that.
Viola Davis was in that as
Was she
well. What
really?
the fuck? Like, that's such a rando cast. No, I think about it. Harrison Ford, Viola Davis, and Asa Butterfield.
Oh,
In
bless.
Ender's Game.
Maybe that's the cast for the new Harold and Maude movie. Get Viola Davis as Maude, get Asa Butterfield as Harold, and Harrison Ford can be the military uncle.
Yeah, and Harrison Ford can be the
Yeah,
uncle.
We got it.
Yep.
That's perfect casting then and there.
I feel like Ender's Game and Divergent, they like maybe those two movies had a deal where they used the same set. Oh, and like Jupiter Ascending, and they just use the same set and the same costumes, but they just dye them slightly differently each time. I can't tell those movies apart from each other. They all look so similar.
And you know what? They're all movies that kind of jumped on, or maybe not Jupiter's Ascending, but they all jumped on that idea of like, oh shit, let's take a book series because like Harry Potter's over now and like the Hunger Games is a thing. Let's just jump on the back of this and just do some fucking rando series. You know, I'm not saying, not having shade on those book series. They're probably great. I haven't read them personally.
can't read.
But like, you know, just jumping in, let's do like a teenage, you know, sci-fi story where like, you know, we're kind of like in a post-apocalyptic society where like shit's going down, but the kiddies are going to save the day and they just want to, you know, get together and have some romance and take on the powers that be.
See,
You know
that's what I
mean?
really want. I want Harold and Maude inserted into a YA dystopia and just see how they react.
Oh,
You're a horrible person, dude. I don't want that for anyone.
I know. Yeah, man.
They're just like committing weird suicides along the adventure. Just like, come on, we gotta save the day.
Oh, God.
Oh man. Oh god. Now, that's an interesting question. What kind of odd couple would you want in like a multi-million-dollar franchise? I want to watch that movie, Valerian. That's it.
Oh, the Luc Besson one. Yeah.
Looks like hot shit.
With Cara
I
Delevingne,
wanna watch
yeah.
that.
And
Oh
Dane
yeah,
DeHaan.
I watched Cool World the other day, and like I love it
that?
when millions of dollars smell that bad. It's great.
Oh,
Cool World's the one with Brad Pitt. It's the Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like before Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a thing.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this.
Yeah,
Is it
I
hot
haven't seen
garbage?
it, though.
It's Brad Pitt's first movie, and it is it's fucking pain, dude. I don't know how to describe it to you. Essentially, this sorry, Harold and Maude's done. We're talking about Cool World now. Cool World. The plot of Cool World, I'll summarize it really quickly, is Brad Pitt, his mum dies, he gets sucked into a cartoon world. About 60 years later, a cartoonist gets sucked into the same world because it's the world that he's been drawing, and there's only one rule in Cool World, and that's you cannot have sex with cartoon characters. And the whole movie is around this idea of you cannot fuck a cartoon. Do not fuck a cartoon. And guess what happens? And then that becomes the plot of the movie. And it's just like
this is the weirdest
God.
premise.
It's
Oh
if you want to
my.
see the most outdated piece of shit in the world, please watch Cool World for your own sake.
Oh my god, you pitched that like that has only hooked me in.
If you watch Cool World, I'm coming on.
Oh
Yeah, no,
I
that's what I
need to
mean.
vent
Like
about
maybe
this shit
the
movie.
next time Carter's on the show is when we do a Cool World review, Brad Pitt special.
Why does that movie
Brad-
exist? That's amazing.
Why not?
Watch it and find out, my friend. It is a
Cool World.
fucking nightmare.
Well, look, our lovely listeners, that was Cool World and also Harold and Maude.
We did both.
That was a fantastic episode, and if you enjoyed that, our lovely listeners, please get on the socials, talk to us on Instagram, on Twitter, on the YouTube comments, you know, send us an email if you like that antiquated shit. Just get in contact and tell us what you thought of Harold and Maude, and like what classic movie you want to see us review next. Now I've said all that, Carter, what thank you again for bringing this film to our attention and having a chat about
Thanks for
something
coming
that
on,
you're
dude.
passionate about. We just love it, man. We loved having you on the show, and it was a good time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure helping out a friend in need through these troubling times.
Yes, I got down on the knees and I begged Carter, and he's like, Nathan, stand up. This is pathetic.
Guess I'll watch a nice movie that I enjoy, and I guess I'll come on and talk about it.
Oh, I know. God, what a mission. Ugh. To pretend to like these
But yeah,
people.
thanks guys. This has been a fun time.
Cool, yeah. And let us know, listeners, if you love this movie. Let us know what your thoughts are on Harold and Maude. Is Carter right? Is he wrong? So like, we're going to get all these people writing about like Cool World just being like, no, this is the movie. Like, fuck Harold and Maude. Like,
Look, the Instagram and Twitter polls will tell the true story, what people think of this movie. Fingers crossed. Look, surely people like, come on. It's a good
It's
time.
a great time. Well, Carter, do you think we should untie Brenton from his little hanging noose, or should we just leave him here?
Oh yeah, shit, he's still been here. I thought Tom Hooper. That's why I didn't say Brennan's name, because I thought it was Tom Hooper the whole time. So I was like a bit worried if I should. I don't know what to call him. If this is his fetish, that's don't want to kink shame. So that's on him. But yeah, I guess we should get him down from the ceiling. Have you got a box cutter or like a?
Sporks work really well I know from
All
experience.
right. Well, how about Nathan? If you just grab your fist and put it right up like that in his asshole. And we just stand there. I'm just gonna go, and you guys can just do whatever you want. I'll leave a GoPro here. I might pick it up in like 48 hours.
Well, this is one way to get all the news, isn't it?